Sting, welcome back to Q.
It's fantastic to be back.
Nice to see you
back
again.
in Toronto, which I have a long history with.
Yes, you do.
And going back over the years, so it's great to bring my play here. And to be here for a protracted length of time, I think 6 weeks, maybe 7. So, yeah, I'm happy.
Just enough time to not get annoyed by the weather, I find.
I'm happy the weather was worse today. I was expecting this weather, and on Monday I came and it was just too mild. I thought, I've got all these winter clothes I'm looking forward to wearing, so today's better.
You grew up in a shipbuilding community, very similar to the setting for the play. Tell me a little bit about what it was like growing up in Walsall.
I literally lived within spitting distance of a shipyard, one of the most famous shipyards in the world. Some of the largest vessels ever constructed on planet Earth were built at the end of my street.
Man.
And my earliest memories were of giant ships towering over the houses and actually blotting out the sun for most of the year. I'd watch thousands of men walk down the street to work in the yard every day, and as a kid I would think, well, is this my destiny? My grandfather had worked there, my father built turbines. And that was the last thing I wanted, man. It was a dark, dangerous, frightening place. And so I got a scholarship, and I went to a grammar school, and they taught me Latin and history and philosophy, and I never, ever thought about the shipyard again. Until years later, and I had a very successful career as a musician.
I've heard, yeah.
You might know
Yeah,
that.
I've heard about it.
And I started to think about where I came from and how important that was, and being part of that community. And I realized in an ideal position as a songwriter for someone who'd lived there with those people to tell a story that hadn't been told before. And almost as if it was a debt I needed to pay.
A debt you needed to pay.
A debt to the people who brought me up.
Yeah. Did you go back?
Not very often. Not very often. I exiled myself. And I was busy going around the world and, getting Grammy Awards and being paid extravagant amounts of money. So you don't really think about home. But at some point, I think like a salmon, you sometimes have to go back to the place you were spawned, to figure out who you are. And immediately I decided to do that. Songs began to come out of me like, I describe it as projectile vomiting, because they seemed to be inside me already formed. And I wrote these songs very quickly. And we had the idea that it could be a musical, maybe. Or more of a play, actually, than a musical, but a play with songs. I think of musicals as being something else.
Yeah, there's a different vibe when you say the word musical.
There's a different vibe.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a serious subject.
Yeah, it's not Oklahoma.
It's not. Well, I like Oklahoma.
Do you?
But it's not a fairy tale. Mm-hmm. It's not something that is from the Disney catalog. It's an original story, and of course, that is the most difficult thing you can do in the musical theater, is to do something original. But I'm an ambitious guy, and I've never really been one to fall off the lowest rung of any ladder. I walk up, and it's been a 7-year journey so far. We've had our triumphs, we've had our failures, but it's wonderful to have been given the opportunity to keep adapting the thing, to keep changing it, tweaking it, and bringing it up to this point. And I feel that Toronto will get it. I hope they will get it, but I'm quite confident they will.
Given everything you just told me, I'm wondering why you didn't cast yourself as the lead character, as Gideon, as the person who goes away from the community and comes back. Is that it?
I'm too old to play Gideon. I'm 67.
And he's 17.
Gideon is in his early 30s. I'd never intended to be in the play. I just wanted to write it and have it produced. And then when we were on Broadway, the producer came up to me and said, we need to sell more tickets, and to do that, we need a star. I said, who would that be? Mm-hmm. He said, you. I said, really? He said, yes. And so I agreed. I could only do it for a month because I was booked to do a tour with Paul Simon, I think. So I did it for a month, tickets improved, and we did well, but then we had to close because I had to leave. So when I was approached to do this one, having already done it and felt pretty confident about it, I know this character, I know his strengths, I know his weaknesses, I know his conflicts. I feel very confident about doing it, very happy to do it. I play the foreman of the yard.
Tell me about him.
He is halfway between management and the men, and so he has a great loyalty to the men, also a great loyalty to the company he's worked for his whole life. So he's conflicted in this situation that arises politically, where the government stops supporting the industry, and so it's largely about his conflict. There's a love story involved, obviously, but also one of the interesting things about this new iteration of the play is the agency of women. It is the women of the town who actually save the day, who take over, and that's unusual in a play that's about a male hierarchy or a male-dominated industry.
Yeah.
It's the women who. Well, you see, if you see the play, you see that women take over. And I think at this time, that's a very interesting thing to be saying.
Is that something you observed when you were looking back at your own childhood within the shipbuilding community, that perhaps the women didn't get the attention they deserved for the health of the community?
Well, a lot of women worked in the shipyards, particularly during the Second World War, and a lot of men had to go away and fight. There were women in the shipyards. But, yeah, they were not given the respect that they have to be given now. That's just history. But we're not rewriting history. We're just, redressing a balance somewhere.
No, you're highlighting things that perhaps weren't highlighted before. I understand. Well, I'm interested in the fact that when you were approached, these tickets weren't selling. They needed a star. You jumped on board. You're here in Toronto doing this show as well. It's one thing to write a show. It's one thing to be creative a show and just let it go and let it be your own and let other people take care of it. You obviously feel a great responsibility towards the show.
I'm very proud of this show. I really am. I feel I've been writing it my whole life. It seems like a kind of legacy for me, and as I said, it's a legacy. It's a debt to where I come from. Yeah, legacy.
Meaning, after you're gone, it'll still be performed. Because you have quite a legacy already.
Plays tend to be performed, even after people have died.
But you have quite a legacy already, because records tend to be played after people have died too.
Well, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Who plays records anymore either, too, right?
But I'm very proud of the play, and I watched it a lot. I sat in the audience a lot and sat with grown men crying in the dark, for whom it clearly resonated in a very profound level. So I know it works. It's a very emotional piece. It's also fun. I don't want to give the impression that it's all really heavy. There's a lot of fun in it. There's a lot of romance in it. Some damn good songs. Our songwriter is very good.
I want to talk about some of these songs, though I hear he's all right. I hear he did pretty good in his day. If you're just tuning in, I'm speaking to Sting, the prolific singer and songwriter. We're talking about his latest project, his debut musical, The Last Ship. I had a conversation with your former collaborator there, Brian Adams, a little while ago, and he just recently did the music for the...
He did Pretty Woman.
Pretty Woman.
Yeah.
And I said, how was it? He said, it was so nice to feel vulnerable again. It was so nice to feel like I wasn't going to be an expert on this and I had to learn something new. Can you relate to that for this?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a very demanding and exacting form. And, in Brian's experience and my experience of being band leaders, we say something and it happens.
Yeah.
In the theater, you have to negotiate. There are directors, there are actors, there are producers, there are people who build scenery. So a song has to fight for its own life every day. Every couplet, every line has to fight for its life, and Brian and I are not used to that, and yet that's very healthy for us because at the end of the day, there's a phrase: you have to kill your own babies. You have to cut things that you perhaps loved, and I would say, but that's my finest couplet. It's not working. If it's not projecting the plot, if it's not advancing the plot, is what I mean, then it's gone. And so it's very demanding, but that's good for us.
You strike me as a man of great confidence. When you work on something like this, something that's new to you, do you ever feel vulnerable? Like, I don't know how this is going to work out?
Yeah, of course I do. But I'm also aware that it's important to take that risk. I mean, I'm not risking my life here. Let's be realistic here. But you risk your reputation by going into a field that perhaps you're not that familiar with. I've acted before. I've been in movies. I've been on Broadway stage. I was in the Three Penny Opera. I played Mac the Knife. I began my professional musical career as a bass player in the Pit, in a theatre playing Joseph's Technicolor Dreamcoat.
I did too. I started playing West Side Story. Yeah.
And I loved, I was in the pit in the dark with a music stand and my music, and I could see the conductor and I could hear the actors rattling above me on the stage. But I liked it. Mm-hmm. I never imagined that one day I'd come back to the theatre as the boss. But that's how things happen.
I liked hiding out in the Pit when I was playing pits. I played the Oklahoma Pit we were talking about.
Oh, you did?
Really, yeah. I played the banjo. I mean, it was in my hometown of St. John's that I also am not in anymore. But I sort of like the wearing all dark clothes anonymity. Yeah. But I felt like I was kind of behind the scenes making it happen.
It is behind the scenes, and it's a very, very cave-like atmosphere, so you feel kind of safe. But no, I loved it.
You've had some pretty amazing musicians in the Pit for the last ship too. I know some good friends of mine have played accordion in the Pit, and it's been some amazing music.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
We have some local Toronto, Ontario musicians playing in this production, and we met on Monday. That's the other thing. It's a real seat of the pants job. You know, you meet the musicians on Monday and you're performing on Saturday.
It takes trust.
It's tough.
Yeah, what's tough about him?
Just because you don't have all the time in the world to rehearse, to make it perfect. You know, it has to be done, by the seat of the pants.
Yeah, you're a jazz musician. You know, that makes sense to me. You would like improvisation. You would like risk.
I'm not afraid. I think we have great musicians and it's a good score, and it will be ready by Saturday. Today's Wednesday, right?
That's right.
We have 3 days.
Yeah, you're all right. Sure, you're wearing your costume right now. You'll be fine.
I'm wearing my costume because I just came off stage and I'm going back on stage.
I want to go back to the theme we talked about at the beginning of leaving and then returning. This is something in your own life, and this is something in your play as well. Take a listen to this song.
That's the Animals, who were the first pop band to make it out of my hometown in the 60s. They famously did House of the Rising Sun.
Did they ever?
And this one really was the kind of anthem for my generation. We got to get out of this place because our town was dying. And so, and I know Eric Burden. I see him
from the Animals,
whenever I play in Santa Barbara. He always comes and we talk about. He was a welder in a big factory, and so that song was a kind of anthem for us.
Do you still speak to some of the folks you grew up in before you moved away?
Yeah, I still have school friends I'm in touch with, and I see. We took the play back to Newcastle last April. And that was very interesting because everyone in the town had something with some connection with the shipyard. And so it resonated very, very deeply and very personally with them. But then we took it to Glasgow, where there was a big shipyard industry. We took it to Edinburgh, Liverpool, Dublin. And it did have an effect everywhere. But I know there's something going on here in Ontario, the GM plant, which is about to close.
That's right.
And there's a resonance there. The abstract economic theories that say, okay, for the bottom line we have to close a factory, are still here. And what happened in the 80s in my town is happening all over the world now. Robots are taking our jobs. My belief is that when you extract the value of community from economic theories, you end up with something that in the short term may work, but in the long term is untenable. I think for me, the basis of economics is community. So it has to be part of the equation.
Irvin Welsh would say that the increase in drug use in the UK and Canada and the United States has to do with the loss of work, has to do with these companies shutting down, people feeling a lack of purpose that they had their entire lives.
I mean, I'm very lucky. I work with my hands every day. And as tough as the work in the shipyard was, really tough and terrible working conditions, those men could leave the yard, turn around and see something they'd built with their own hands,
Right.
with an enormous amount of pride. As I imagine the car workers, the GM can say that, we built those cars. So what do you replace that with? What are we going to do when we're not working? And I don't have the answer. I can't wave a magic wand here. But in a way, this play is a gesture of solidarity, if you like, for what is happening everywhere. The Midwest of America, here in Canada, in my country, the whole world. I don't know the answer, but we need to find one.
Why do you think the themes of leaving and returning that I brought up a couple of times so far are so prominent in art?
Say again.
Why do you think the themes of leaving a place, having to leave a place when you're young, we got to get out of this place, and then returning, coming back to your hometown, it's something I see in a lot of songs, it's something I see in a lot of films. I'm wondering if you have any perspective on why we as humans are maybe drawn to those kinds of stories.
I think exile for an artist is a very interesting phenomena. Would James Joyce have been able to write so well about Dublin if he hadn't been exiled himself to Paris? I doubt it. I'm not comparing myself with James Joyce, by the way, but what I'm saying, sometimes you have to leave somewhere to actually see it or to comment on it. When you're stuck there, it's hard to see the wood for the trees. So exile is a theory, is a phenomena, if you like, that artists generally have. You have to leave to make it. You couldn't make it as a rock star in Newcastle. You had to go to London.
Mm-hmm. It's a hard reality. It's a hard reality for a lot of people who want to stay, who want to believe I can make a living without having to move to New York, without having to move to London, without having to move, in our case, to Toronto.
It takes a certain personality to, get on the bus and move.
What's your relationship like with your hometown now?
Pretty good now.
Yeah.
I spoke to a lot of people who worked in the shipyards when we took the play there, and I said, well, you tell me, and they're very honest people, that you did us proud. Was what I would paraphrase their response, that they were proud I'd done it. It reflected well on them, and they were happy that their story had been told, because it hadn't been told before.
The Broadway musical Come From Away, which is about my home province of Newfoundland, they went to Newfoundland to do the show last week, and I asked them on the air, and I said, does it feel different? Now you're telling the story of a community to those people.
Yeah.
Accents aside, and these people having to put on my accent, whatever. All that aside, they said, yeah, we were on stage, and all of a sudden, doing the show in New York and doing the show in Toronto, it felt very different because we were telling the story. Were you extra nervous when it was in your hometown?
Of course I was nervous, because my people are very, very outspoken. They wouldn't lie to me. At the same time, I knew it was the right thing to do. And we got great reviews, not only locally but nationally. So it turned the perception around of what the play was, because we only played on Broadway for 3 or 4 months. That's considered a flop.
Sure.
I didn't consider it a flop at all. But so the perception was, maybe it didn't work, and wondering why it didn't work. But taking it back to Newcastle was a very, very strategic and clever move. Not mine, but it was the producer who said we should do that, and I'm very happy I agreed.
I'll close off like this. The first time we spoke, you were doing small clubs in Toronto again. We were talking a lot about coming back to do these clubs. You were telling me stories of the Horseshoe and war stories of downtown Toronto.
The Edge.
The Edge. The second time we spoke, we were speaking about Shaggy and yours new record, and now we're talking about your musical. I can't in any way predict it, and I have a feeling you can't either. But are you planning on anything next?
Next? Shaggy and I are going to be in England in May for a few dates. Then I'm going off on my own to do a tour called My Songs. I'm not quite sure what that's going to look like, except it's going to be about my songs.
I would guess, yeah.
Then I don't know. I
feel like you got some irons in the fire. I feel like I can see if you're listening on the radio, there's a coyness here. There's a coyness.
They want us to do this play in Los Angeles next January. So I think that'll be very exciting to do that too.
Nice to get out of the weather anyway. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you. Nice to talk to you again.